Okay, good afternoon, everyone. This is the fifth meeting of the Community and Purchase Services Committee. The City of London is situated on the traditional lands of the Nenoshpek, Haudenosaunee, Lenape, and Attawandaron. We honor and respect the history, languages, and culture of the diverse Indigenous people who call this territory home. The City of London is currently home to many First Nation, Métis, and Inuit today. As representatives of the people of the City of London, we are grateful to the opportunity to work and live in this territory. For everyone's information, I am joined in chambers by all the committee, being myself, Councillor McAllister, Pribble, Trousseau, and Ferreira, and we have a few visiting councillors as well. The City of London is committed to making every effort to provide alternate formats and communications supports for meetings upon request. To make a request specific to this meeting, please contact cpsc@london.ca or 519-661-2489, extension 2425. Looking to committee members to see if there's any disclosures of pecuniary interest. Seeing none. On consent, I've been given notice in advance to pull the following items. 2.4, 2.6, 2.7, yeah, so that was the three that I have in advance. So 2.4, 2.6, and 2.7. I know there's questions on other ones, but for the ones to be pulled, looking to see if there's anything further. Okay, so looking for a mover and seconder for all consent items, excluding 2.4, 2.6, and 2.7. That is moved by Councillor Ferreira, seconded by Councillor McAllister. And I will start my speakers list with whoever would like to go first. So that's all the consent is on the floor now for questions, excluding 2.4, 2.6, and 2.7. Okay, I saw Councillor McAllister's hand first, and then Councillor Trousseau's, and then Councillor Pribble. Oh, Sam, your mic's on. Councillor, sorry.
Thank you, through the chair. Question with regards to 2.3. I'm just curious in terms of our end of mortgage exit agreements. I know this is kind of a hot topic in that area. Can we anticipate more of these? Where are we at in terms of working through that list? Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Mathers or Mr. Fehlberg?
Certainly, and through you, Madam Chair. So this is the first one. So this is the first one that we brought forward. In the report, you'll also see, and it's recommendation H, and then the it be noted clause. We're going to come back to you folks with a more detailed financial analysis and a bit of a strategy on where we're going from here and what the impact of that is. With the approval of P11 through the multi-year budget, that is impacted a little bit, and how the province funds us through COCHI, and then what the tax-supported component of it as well, and give you a sense of where we're going from here.
Councillor?
Thank you, and through the chair. So in terms of a timeline, when can we anticipate to see more of these? Just out of curiosity, I know some of our nonprofit housing providers, it's usually a question they have for us. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair. So depending on each provider may have a different time when their mortgage runs out or when their operating agreement runs out. So future agreements would be timed with when that happens. So there's a bunch of analysis that we need to do in order to assess where they're going, if they're ready to exit the agreement. What we aren't anticipating though is we're not anticipating many more exit agreements. We're anticipating it'll be service agreements, which is essentially taking some of the provisions under the Housing Services Act and putting it into a local context, working with the municipality and the provider.
Councillor? Okay, Councillor Trousseau?
Thank you, and this is just a question. I'm not offering an amendment on this, but on the housekeeping amendments for the inspections, there are other items that this council has been discussing, and I've had numerous conversations with Mr. Mathers and others personally about this, and I'm just wondering, I'm assuming in enacting this housekeeping amendment, I'm not precluding other housekeeping amendments coming up because nothing else is being decided. Is that right?
Yeah, and certainly realizing a decided matter of council for 1 year, just want to make sure that if there's more coming, when and when's the appropriate time to do more.
Through the chair, so we can make changes at any time. This report coming forward doesn't preclude any future changes.
Okay, so the other items through the chair that I would hope to see coming forward per some of our discussions that I would consider to be housekeeping amendments and not big changes in policy would be, number one, instituting a report, frequency to be determined, to City Council on property standards and bylaw matters along the lines of what the building department gives to us every month or every quarter.
Question to staff?
Through the chair, so we did bring forward an annual report. If there's direction from committee as far as what they would like as a timing, that we would take that. But at this point, we're not planning any type of changes to that annual reporting. But if it's something that council would like to bring forward as a suggestion and to have a resolution around it, then we'd be happy to oblige.
Could you just tell us when that annual report's expected?
Through the chair, the annual report came in January.
Councilor Trousseau.
Okay, I guess I'm sorry, I probably misunderstood where we were with that. So I would need to bring forward a specific action item, and that would originate from this committee. And I'd like to put that on the agenda then for the next committee to get that report. The other one is protocols for communicating with complainants after they file a complaint. That's another matter that we've had numerous discussions about, and I've expressed my concerns about complainants not being notified about the status of their complaints, and we had discussed the possibility of enacting some protocols.
Okay.
And I guess my question is that also something that I would need to bring forward as another amendment, and would that be considered housekeeping?
Mr. Mathers?
Through the chair, I'm going to pass this to Oris. We have been working with our legal folks on this to understand what the best practices are, but I'll pass this back to Oris.
Thank you. Mr. Katolik?
Yes, through the chair. That motion would have to be a motion to change the council's policy bylaw because it refers to the enforcement policy with respect to active complaints and also has implications on privacy.
Counselor?
So if I understand the answers to the question, then on the first inquiry, that could be housekeeping. The second one would need to be more of a policy change.
Yes, that's correct. The first one, as we discussed at the January CAPS meeting where we were discussing the annual report, we are looking at reporting out metrics on the website because that's the most efficient way of doing it. And the second one would be a change to the municipal compliance policy.
Thank you very much. That answers my questions.
Perfect. Counselor Pribble, I had next on the speakers list.
Thank you, and through the chair to the staff. Going back to point 2.3, which is the Odell Jelna. I had two questions, actually. One question on page 16, it states that the financial analysis and strategic plan recommendations. And if we go on the recommendations under the H, I just want to make sure, when are we going to receive the strategic recommendations as well? Because on page 8 at the bottom, it does address the financial analysis Q2 and service agreement Q3. But the strategic recommendations, when are we expecting to receive those? Thank you.
To staff, please.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. So the intention would be to combine some of those strategic recommendations in with the financial analysis. What we need to really understand is what the implications are long-term for all of the providers that could potentially be exiting and how we might be able to stage that out over the course of the next couple of years. So we'll be bringing, our intention is to bring back at least the preliminary component of that in Q2 of this year.
Counselor?
Okay, thank you for that answer. And earlier today, there was an email that came from Jim Foote, Vice President and Treasurer, with 4 points. I don't know if my colleagues had a chance to, I just actually read it a short time ago, but I just wanted the feedback from our staff about these 4 points, please. Thank you.
I'm not sure if staff was even copied on that correspondence. So if you have, you can comment, and if not, that will have to be up to us to raise the questions.
To you, Madam Chair, would it be appropriate for me to circle back with some detailed responses to each of the questions? We have seen them, but we need to assess it really in the context of our technical analysis, and we can send that to the committee after the fact.
Okay, so Counselor, they're working on in-depth answers, just not available at this time, is what I'm hearing.
Thank you, and by when, please?
Through you, Madam Chair, as soon as possible, hopefully by the end of the week.
Thank you very much. No more questions.
Thank you. I'll note that also that this committee meeting feeds into the April 4th council meeting. So that's our time frame between committee and council, just as we wait for information and move forward with decisions. Looking to see at this time, I'll go to Councilor Ferreira. I do recognize Councilor Stevenson as a guest at committee, but just one committee members first. But I do and will recognize Councilor Stevenson in a few moments. So Councilor Ferreira.
Thank you, Chair. This is also going off, I guess, kind of coming off of Councilor Pribble's questions for 2.3 for the exit agreement, rent supplement agreement. I do see that there's a big push for kind of moving towards more mixed communities of what we're trying to do with this report. I just wanted to ask a simple question. Mixed communities, we won't see any net loss of RGI units or anything like that. It's just integrating, I guess, the socioeconomic aspects for the mixed community part within this type of housing.
Mr. Felberg.
Through you, Madam Chair. So what's really unique about this group is that they have, not only do they have the 4 rent geared to income social housing properties, but they also have an additional 7 affordable housing projects. So what we're looking to do is create a portfolio approach where they can spread those RGI or rent geared to income units across all of their properties so that they're able to leverage the affordable housing, the market of the different properties based on when vacancies occur. So this is somewhat unique and really recognizing the amount and the capacity that this group has.
Councilor.
Thank you for that. I have no questions after that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Stevenson.
Thank you. Mine is regarding 2.10, the winter response. And I just wondered if, I guess because this is the wrap up of the $5 million from the previous winter response, I was looking for how did we do in terms of the commitments that were made coming out of the hunger strike, in terms of what was in the accountability working group update that came to us just after we came into this new council on November 29th, 2022. So when I go back and look at it, the London Cares Hub at 602 Queens for the 1 year, December 2022 to 2023, it said it was going to be open 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, including holidays. And I know we had them operating a center at the Unity Project site, 717 Dundas, as well as the 679 Dundas Street one. So I guess what I was looking for was more information in terms of outcomes, in terms of the service provided. Because here, the 679 Dundas Street, it says day services are Monday, Wednesday, Thursday for 3 hours, Tuesday, Saturday, 5 hours, and the night is 5 days a week. Nighttime drop-in is 5 days a week. Given that that particular location, 679 Dundas, didn't really get beds going until after the last report that we had that went to the end of March. So we had a detailed outline of the number of beds that were available, how many of them were used. I was wondering if it was possible to get some of that information maybe prior to council, just an update on those ones that ran programs from April to the end of November.
Mr. Dickens, and noting as well that this report is 2022 to 2023 numbers.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. That's certainly doable. I just think, just so I have clarity for my team as well, just so we have some of the service impacts or some of the service numbers in the schedule here in the report. And I'm just wondering if specifically what type of outcomes the councilor would be looking for before council.
Councilor Stevenson?
Yeah, thank you. Just confirmation on the hours that were operated and the number of beds available and utilized. I think similar to what was presented when we did the more fulsome one in for the stuff that ended the end of March?
Mr. Dickens?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and that won't be a problem. We'll go through and get that stuff. I know we've reported throughout this process from, as you noted, this is from 2022 and 2023, through some of our reallocation reports as well, that those organizations were unable to open in full scale on the anticipated timelines, and that's why there was unspent funds tied to it. So we can go back through and comb some of those previous reports, or maybe some of that information handy for us.
Thank you, and that will be circulated in advance of council on April 4th. Okay, Counselor?
Perfect, and thank you. And just to be clear, it's really the April to November is that last half of that I'm looking for. Thanks.
Counselor Pribble?
Thank you, and through the chair to the staff, 2.9. And my question is, are we looking, I know all the organizations that we are funding through city, they don't have the access, not all of them, to the HIFIS. Are we looking into the opportunity for all of them to have access and to input the data directly? Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Cooper?
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. We actually have a process where agencies that are have base funding with the city, and as council approved some 2-year funding back in February, all of those organizations will be onboarded, if they're not already, into HIFIS. Where we struggled with historically was around the one-time funding in the short-term agencies. It was just the resources and the timeline to bring agencies on, to staff those agencies up, train those staffing, just didn't align with the shorter-term programs. So it is a direction from the provincial government to have as many funded and non-funded agencies on and utilizing HIFIS in our community. Our London Homeless Prevention Network, we refer to that as LHPN, does have an onboarding process for funded and non-funded agencies. And so any organization who may be interested in utilizing HIFIS can make application to my team, which will be brought forward to that LHPN group for consideration and approval.
Counselor Pribble?
Thank you very much for that. And one follow-up, the ones that we have approved for the 2-year agreement, as I heard, not all of them are on, and we are planning to do it, the rest of them, which are not included. By when, please?
Mr. Cooper?
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. Any organization, I can't say for certain all of them are. I don't have the list of all the organizations that we approved in February. I believe probably 99% of those organizations are already utilizing HIFIS. It is a requirement of their contract that we will be implementing as of April 1. So we will look to onboard them as quickly as we can within my available staff team resources so that they'll be able to input that information as quickly as possible.
Counselor?
Any opportunity then completed before the April 1 or with April 1 so that everyone is on board?
Mr. Cooper?
Thank you, and through the chair, at this point, likely not. Our team is really focused on ensuring we have all those contracts in place, as well as we are at year end for our provincial and federal dollars. So there's a lot of work behind the scenes in reporting to the provincial and federal ministries that do restrict my team's capacity.
Thank you. And then the last question, I'll go the other way. By when at the latest do you feel comfortable that we could have all of them on board?
To the team?
Thank you, and through the chair, it's a continuous process. So I don't want to really put a date on it. We're moving as quickly as we can. There is a set process within our London Homeless Prevention Network to onboard organizations. These organizations, if they're not currently in HIFIS, would be prioritized as part of the contract implementation and moving forward. So I don't want to put a date to it per se. It is a priority for our team. If there is an organization that is currently funded for that 2-year period that does not have or is not utilizing HIFIS, to onboard them into HIFIS.
Counselor?
Without putting too much pressure, but is 2024, is this year feasible?
Mr. Cooper?
Thank you, and through the chair, yes, it is feasible within 2024.
Thank you.
Thank you. I see Counselor Stevenson. And then before we do the vote, I'll just make a couple of comments from the chair when everyone else has their opportunity. Counselor?
Thank you. I just had a question on this HIFIS as well. I noticed some of the information is required and then there's some that's optional for participants to respond to. is it easy to get compliance there in terms of the required section? Like what happens if you've got participants who don't want to answer the questions or provide the information? Or is that something that even happens?
Okay, Mr. Cooper.
Thank you, and through the chair, we do have some options where people can decline to answer, so that would be a way to continue on with the onboarding into HIFIS. Again, the work there is a continual improvement, right? So as we build the relationship with an individual who is accessing services, they may in the future wish to disclose any information that they may not have in the past. And so our organizations are able to, if they're able to ascertain that information, can upload it into HIFIS. So there are some options where people can decline to answer. And then I say it's a continual improvement to try and get as much information as we can to assist with any services that that individual might need.
Counselor?
Thank you. Just as a follow-up, so when it says it's required information versus the optional, even on the required, they can decline to answer?
Mr. Cooper?
Thank you. And through the chair, yes, they can. We have that for a number of options, but we don't want to have that as a barrier then for somebody to be able to access service or to get into HIFIS. So we recognize that a lot of the work we do is relationship building with individuals and building trust. And so information is shared quite freely as that trust is built and increases. So to not be able to create a HIFIS profile or have somebody come into HIFIS where they have declined to answer a specific question around age or gender, this seems counterproductive.
Counselor?
Thank you. I appreciate that. And is it, I guess I'm just wondering if it is an issue in terms of the reliability of the information, or if you find that it's a small enough subset that it's not impacting sort of whether we know who is accessing services or some of the other important criteria?
Mr. Cooper, I'll also recognize that as we're talking about people's information, making them identifiable, some of them don't even have ID to prove even what they are saying. So I know it's more of a fluid conversation with some of our residents we're trying to help.
Thank you, and through the chair, it is a small subset. It doesn't really impact our data information, and many times we can sort that data out should it not be reliable. So if somebody hasn't answered a certain question that we're trying to understand, to say an average age for an individual who is accessing a certain service, we could pull that information out because it could potentially impact what our numbers might be, right? So it is not significant from the data that I've reviewed in the last year and a half when we have been looking at by name lists and other data around housing placements and shelter usage that we can run in HIFIS.
Okay. Okay, looking to see if there's any further comments or questions. Okay, just briefly from the chair, I just want to recognize that the Accessibility Committee, just recognizing and thanking Jay Menard for coming on as chair and Susan Manipul as vice chair, to thank you for them for serving in this capacity. And as per item 2.3, the Odell Jalna end of mortgage exit agreement, thank you to staff for your work on this, recognizing it is a unique opportunity. And as the ward councillor of Gentleman Woods, I have reached out to the board too, that if there's any assistance in any capacity, that we're partners in serving, and many doors are open to them. So thank you for that. Seeing no further, one more hand up, perfect, just in time. Councillor Trausa.
Thank you. Just a minor comment. I would like to acknowledge in the Animal 2.2, the Animal Welfare Committee Advisory Report, the work that's been done by Johnny and Gabrielle Pierce, who are residents, they're youngsters, they're residents of the Broughdale community, and we're very proud of them for writing a piece that went into the Neighborhood magazine about a closer look at wildlife in our neighborhood, and that's been reproduced for you in the CAPS agenda. And I just wanted to acknowledge the work that they did on this. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further before calling the question? Seeing none, calling the question. Counselor Traustadt, I need your microphone.
I vote yes. I vote yes.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. I will now go through consent in numerical order, as I know we have some guests here with us to hear this conversation. So rent evictions, the initial research report, I will turn over to staff for a very brief overview. Also noting that I've received in advance a couple questions of clarity of when the full report is coming and when would the timeline to enact anything be. So Mr. Katolik, I believe it's your overview, and those two questions were submitted in advance.
Thank you, and through the chair, Mr. Ling will provide a summary of the report shortly. Our plan is to prepare a draft bylaw by the end of Q2 of this year. After that, we would move forward to a public participation meeting. And then following that, depending on council direction, prepare a report back on implementation, including a financial analysis and staffing implications. And in that report, we would outline operationally when we would begin enactment of such a bylaw. There's a number of provincial matters at hand too, because while we're doing this work, if the province moves ahead with legislation, because there's numerous Ontario municipalities looking into this matter, it may alter our plans and reporting back as well. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Ling.
Perfect. And welcome, Mr. Lang.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Today, we're here to present our research and findings regarding rent evictions. Rent eviction is a term that on its surface describes a situation where a landlord evicts a tenant because they intend to perform renovations on the rental unit or property and they require the unit to be empty to make those changes. In Ontario, this intent to evict, demolish, or convert to a non-residential use is formally made through an N13 notice. The renovation eviction process is outlined in the Ontario Residential Tenancies Act, the act which sets out the rules for navigating the landlord-tenant relationship. What is being discovered, however, in Ontario and across Canada and worldwide is that notwithstanding the formal rules, there are other forces at work which are leading to a larger problem, which has been labeled as renoviction, but often referred to in the literature as structural displacement on a broader level. Aside from the European examples provided in our report, we've highlighted a couple of cities in British Columbia, New Westminster and Burnaby. These two cities have identified or did identify issues regarding tenant evictions based on renovations and moved quickly to craft tenant protection policies in order to address the situation. These policies are considered by many, or have been considered, to be outside the scope of municipal power, but the cities enacted them regardless in order to help protect their citizens. We have had discussions with both the mayor and staff of New Westminster and staff in Burnaby regarding their previous and current situation. As indicated in the report as well, the BC provincial government adopted a number of the measures that these two municipalities had enacted, which was intended to strengthen their Provincial Residential Tenancies Act. However, notwithstanding the provincial changes, both municipalities maintain a robust tenant support system in order to identify and fill the gaps they still see regarding provincial enforcement in British Columbia. In Ontario, the City of Hamilton has introduced a bylaw and an associated program to address what they and others have identified as shortcomings in the Ontario Residential Tenancies Act. This new program is expected to be in place by January of 2025, including a new bylaw. In our discussions with Hamilton staff, the purpose of the bylaw was to provide a process to mitigate the landlord-tenant relationship that should help eliminate bad faith renovictions, allow honest landlords to carry out necessary renovations and/or repairs to their properties, and to deter landlords from arbitrarily evicting tenants using the N13 process, or the threat of that process. The work presented in our report focuses more so on the narrow renoviction definition,
But we have included discussion in that report on the broader forces to help inform our next steps and ensure we are aware should alternative processes, protections, or partnerships arise during the next stages. As shown, evidence of renovictions specifically and structural displacement more generally is present in London, and the official data does not provide a full measure of the impact. Unfortunately, many people are simply unaware of their rights as tenants, and the administrative steps set out by the province that go into maintaining that relationship between the tenant and landlord are complex. Hamilton's proposed bylaw and the New Westminster and Burnaby examples summarized in our report target specific service gaps to help ensure their citizens are, at the very least, aware of their rights. This awareness alone can help to reduce bad faith renovictions. Further, the bylaws and support programs in place in those cities help to facilitate that complex provincial process and relationship where renovation requiring eviction is needed. Also, maintaining that connection between the tenant and landlord that is essential throughout the entirety of the process, from being displaced to going back into the unit. As indicated in the report and by Oris, the staff intend to report back by the end of Q2 with a draft bylaw, including addressing those matters from the January 24th resolution pertaining to renovictions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Looking to start my speakers item list on this one. Okay, I'm aware of a potential motion floating out there. So either I would need staff's recommendation, which we received this report, to be put on the floor, or an alternate motion. Councillor Trousseau.
Thank you. I want to start by saying thank you so much for your report. This was a very thorough and well-researched report. And I think it stands as sort of a model for really top-of-the-line staff work. And I really want to thank you for it. It was well documented, it was well researched, it was evidence-based, and it was most significantly, it was based on the experience of other jurisdictions that have gone through this. By looking at the Hamilton bylaw and the experience in the BC jurisdictions, I think you've saved a lot of staff work and you've expedited the timeline for the implementation of this very badly needed remedial measure, which is well within the jurisdiction of the health and safety powers of the city. First and foremost, thank you. This was a wonderful report. Now, what I would like to do is, I think the Hamilton bylaw is pretty solid in terms of what we need to do. Now, the Hamilton bylaw talks about licensing, and this is there are two aspects of licensing here that I think it's important that we distinguish. We had previously asked for a report back on amending the residential landlord-tenant licensing bylaw to look at the threshold for what triggers the general registration requirement. And that is not on the table today. And I understand that there was a clause in the report that said we're coming forward with the Part A because of the more urgent nature of it. So I assume that regardless of what we say today, the other parts of that referral are still being worked on by staff and will come back to us in Q2. And you're nodding. You don't have to answer that. What I would like to do is I would like to explore the possibility of doing this a little quicker in terms of the Hamilton bylaw that's appended as Part A. Now, you know, I've gone through the Hamilton bylaw very, very carefully, and it seems to me, and if there's a reason why I'm wrong about this, I'd like to hear about it. Other than changing the word Hamilton and London, my view is this bylaw is good to go. And we should have a public participation meeting, and we should have a cost estimate in terms of what will be required to implement this. I initially had I initially had suggested through an amendment that I circulated to some of the councilors through the clerk, that we actually enact this at our April 2nd meeting. But I think it will need a public participation meeting. It is going to be a controversial measure, and I think a public participation meeting is warranted. And I would like to get more information from the staff in terms of the costs. Now, on a cost recovery basis, this should not be a burden on the city, because I think the costs for this are going to have to be borne by the potential licensees. And after all, one of the purposes of this proposed bylaw is to discourage people from filing frivolous and eviction notices. So what I would like to propose is that we include in this, and this is an inquiry whether we can do this. I don't think it's contrary, but could we include in the motion that we passed today the notion that we will set this for a public participation meeting based on the Hamilton bylaw, and that we will await any changes that need to be made to that, and we will also await a cost schedule. But what can we do to expedite this?
Thank you.
I'll yield to staff and then to council.
Yep. I'll note that we're at the end of Q1. Staff said draft bylaw for Q2, which very well could be the next meeting of CAPS, could be 3 months from now. So just looking for a timeline for that first, and then, or to be included with the counselor's questions.
Through the chair, we'll have a response for you shortly. We just want to make sure that we've spoken to legal about this as well. So Orris is out back at his spot there, so he's going to provide you a little bit of background on how we can proceed.
That was a nice holdover. Mr. Katolik.
Thank you. I have a concern with that approach, and my concern is based on our experience with other bylaws that we've passed where there's been applications to quash. And we've been very successful in the courts in those applications because we've gone through a process of municipal scans, research, dropping a bylaw, having a public participation meeting, reporting back on a public participation meeting, having further community discussions, and then we're in council's hands whether they want to pass the bylaw or not. If we simply just took Hamilton's bylaw and changed it from Hamilton to London and said this is now ours, I'm actually not sure because of some IT issues Hamilton has been having over the last couple of weeks, where their bylaw stands. Is it currently under appeal? Is it fully passed? We're not up to speed on exactly what Hamilton is doing. However, I am aware that Hamilton is looking at hiring 8 full-time staff to implement their bylaw, including 3 licensing staff, 3 bylaw officers, a solicitor, a housing clerk. So we've looked at that model. Implementing the Hamilton model not only impacts municipal compliance services, it also impacts Mr. Dickens' service area and legal as well, because we will see additional property standard appeals out of this. So I would recommend, when I'm in council's hands, to have staff report back with a City of London bylaw. There are aspects of Hamilton's bylaw that initially we have some better wording. We have also been in discussion with BC municipality on their wording. So we're getting best practices across Canada. So that would be my recommendation, that we, if council wishes, we respond back with a City of London bylaw, go through a public participation process, and follow the standard procedure.
And just a follow-up, do you know when in Q2 that next draft bylaw and subsequent report would be expected?
Through the chair, it'll be near the end of Q2.
Thank you. Counselor Trousseau?
Well, I don't think, until I heard that last point, I didn't think we were that far apart. The reality on the ground is that tenants need this relief. And I mean, I'd be interested to hear what the different language would be, but I'd really like to expedite the reporting back on that. We're in Q2 at our next meeting. I don't want to delay this 3 months because so much good work has been done. I'm gonna yield. I'll save the rest of my time and yield to the other counselor.
Okay, I'll also note, I actually don't have a motion on the floor for us to be discussing at the moment. Counselor Ferreira, perhaps you have some questions, and then we can move forward with the motion.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. With respect to what I heard from Mr. Katolik, we did redraft the bylaw that you might have originally saw for a more specific London bylaw, which is giving exactly what you kind of spoke to, staff to report back, to look into the costs associated and the resources and everything like that. And we just circulated that very late, so apologies for that. So you might have not been able to see that. With respect to the tie for the Hamilton, we do have a motion that still hasn't been put on the floor, the renovation license and relocation language for the title of the bylaw itself. But we do have a motion, and I would be willing to put it on the floor that basically asks for that. So I guess I'll move that motion. And the clerk does have it. I can read the motion out. Okay, so the motion reads.
Okay, so just 1 second. As you read it out, can we put it on the screen as well? Okay, we're just going to put it up in eScribe, realizing that Counselor Ferrer is the mover. I don't have a seconder yet, but just as you read it, we can see it as well and hear it, and then we can look for a seconder.
Okay. So as it comes up on the screen, I'll just read it out. So the amendment or the motion is that Civic Administration report back regarding a renovation license and relocation bylaw, along with estimates of the costs associated with enactment and corresponding licensing fees at the Q2 2024 report. It being noted that a public participation meeting will be held with the introduction of a new bylaw.
Okay. Just giving everyone a chance to read it. Okay, Mr. Katolik, not sure if this is in line with the report back that would be coming regardless in Q2, or if this, just looking for your feedback.
Yes, and through the chair, may I ask the counselor a question?
Yeah, for clarification, please do.
Through the chair, I heard the counselor say that the council redrafted a bylaw from Hamilton. Could I get clarification on that, please?
Yeah, Councillor Ferrer, you did say that you drafted a bylaw, just making, looking for
If I said
clarification.
that, I misspoke. I didn't draft any bylaw. We were just kind of tying off with the bylaw that we saw from Hamilton within the report. And we do know that we have to have an application that fits the City of London, so which is why we pulled the language specifically for Hamilton and just used the language for the renovation license and relocation parts.
So the councillor, for clarification, does not have a bylaw that he drafted to be included with this motion.
No, I would, we're asking, yeah.
Thank you for that clarification. We have, our plan is to report back at the end of Q2 with a draft bylaw that we will drop for a future public participation meeting in Q3. Normally after that, we report back on public comments and have an implementation plan, and that includes the cost of staffing and associated fees, depending on what type of recovery we're looking at. Hamilton has, for example, a 10% recovery fee. So there will be some further analysis taken, but we're looking at this process very similar to the way we've enacted larger bylaws, like the vehicle for hire bylaw and the rental licensing bylaw.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for this motion? Okay, the seconder would be Counselor Trousseau. So this item's on the floor. I do have a quick question to Mr. Katolik, looking to see if this would be contrary or in line with what staff would already be working on for a report back. And two, if that report back will also include a source of financing, as we heard that Hamilton expanded for 8 staff.
Yes, through the chair, generally it would be in line, but I have to caution that future reports could amend the costing of this program.
Okay, commencing my speakers list. Okay, I'll start with committee members first, and I recognize that Deputy Mayor Lewis is with us today and will be on the speakers list. And I do believe Councillor Rahman is online as well if they would like to weigh in on this. Councillor Ferreira.
Thank you. So that's the reason we brought this motion is just to kind of just constrict the scope of what we're trying to do in the most immediate terms, because, you know, I would consider this part of our housing emergency as well, just because we have seen the numbers, and this is a real occurrence that's happening here in London. I would also say, speaking to the report, it was a very great report. I really liked the information in that, and this whole agenda, actually, even with everything else, I'll be keeping this just for review for other items as well. And I would say that, you know, many people are unaware of their rights as tenants and what gaps really exist that they could step into. And usually people are not aware of these gaps until it's too late, until they've fallen in. So we're looking for a way to provide a clean and direct enforceable pathway of communication between the tenants and landlords. And just last week, I see these inquiries all the time about N13s. And just last week, I had a tenant who told me that she was served an N13 by her landlord in April 30th, 2023. And she informed the landlord that she is going to be returning to the unit when the work has been done. And we're almost coming up on the year span. And she is now at the point of taking legal action with her landlord, because the landlord has given her a very vague response, but it seems to be tying in the municipality in its cover. And verbatim, the email that I got, what the landlord gave to this tenant was that the municipality, as to the deficiencies therein and mandated remedies thereto, before allowing reoccupancy, and they are basing that on some work that is supposed to be done. So I would like, you know, a little bit, just to be a little more focused on how the city can manage these certain situations, and also not be used to get in the middle of an N13 renoviction. So it is an emergency situation as I see it, which is why I'd like to see that this motion get pushed on through. I was hoping that we could get in line with how the City of London works. So I do understand that a Hamilton bylaw would not necessarily be applicable to the City of London with respect to the fees, the resources, industry, individuals who are, you know, on the supply side. And this is why we have this motion here, and this is why we're looking for the support, because we would like staff to look into these matters and speak with the different stakeholders available, just so we can have something that fits London very well. I also just want to speak to something that's not necessarily in this motion, but it is on the report, and it's with the information for tenants in the city page, the possibility of a city page that gives the rights, your rights as a tenant. I am very interested in that, and the reason that you have this written the way it is because we're trying to capture all that in a simple way. So I am hoping for some support on this, and hopefully we can bring some action to protect some tenants out there.
Councillor McAllister.
Thank you through the chair, and I appreciate Councillor Ferreira and Councillor Trousseau bringing this forward. My question speaks to the timeline that Councillor Trousseau alluded to earlier. So my question, and back to staff on this, would be, I mean, I view this as a very high needs bylaw in terms of what I hear from the community. We're trying to keep people housed. This is something that we can do from the city side in terms of ensuring people can stay housed and not be evicted in bad faith. And I'm just wondering, I know in terms of the wording that's being presented before us, and it's Q2, is it not possible to bring the draft, I was just looking at our schedule in terms of CAPS meetings in Q2, to have it back and do the PPM within Q2 and not drag this into Q3? Is that feasible? Because I honestly think this is something that we really do need to prioritize. I understand in terms of the workload and what everyone has right now, but I really think this is something we need to prioritize. So I'm just looking to staff to see if this is something we can move up.
Mr. Katolik, recognizing that staff can't implement stuff until council in April approves it, and then it's always that council glitch before they can actually move forward with the work that committee directed.
And through the chair, we also need to ensure that we can make all of the deadlines for postings and things like that as well. So that's what we're just having a conversation about.
Mr. Katolik?
We would do our best to drop a bylaw in Q2 and possibly have a PPM in Q2, but if we don't follow procedures that will allow for adequate community comments, then this bylaw, because it's not a simple bylaw amendment, it's a new bylaw, could be fatal if there was a application to quash the bylaw in the courts.
Councilor McAllister?
Thank you, and through the chair. Could you then offer me some insight in terms of the process? What would be deemed adequate in terms of a timeline for community feedback? How much time would you need once we have the bylaw and then PPM and then be able to enact this?
Through the chair, we could have a public participation meeting where we drop the bylaw the Wednesday before. We would recommend yet another public participation meeting because the public is not giving adequate time, nor are we presenting it to our council, a draft bylaw, to have a public participation meeting. So that actually could lengthen the process of having 2 PPMs where we could only have 1. But this is the most important item on our to-do list from a policy perspective in municipal compliance. You know, it's higher than, you know, natural lawns, it's higher than our vehicle bylaw. All those things are important, but this is the top item that we're working on this year. But we want to do it right, and we have experience in applications to quash bylaws. And we've been very successful in the courts because we have followed a public process where the community has had adequate information and adequate opportunities to comment. Because this is a simple, there's 2 sides of this issue. There's the tenant side and the landlord side. We don't want to stop renovations of apartments. We want to stop unfair renovictions.
Thank you for those comments. Councilor McAllister?
Yes, thank you, and through you. And I do appreciate that in terms of prioritization. And to your last point there, I mean, absolutely, we want there to be renovations when they're done properly, but it is going after those bad actors, and really that's at the heart of what we're trying to do here. Because I view this as part of our, you know, in terms of one of our strategic goals, right? Like we want to obviously build new housing, but we also want to keep people housed as best as we can. And I think this is a mechanism from the city perspective that we can utilize to help folks. So I hear what you're saying. I think it's tough because we hear the need from our constituents. Obviously, we'd like to expedite this as much as possible, but we also recognize that we need to have something that will hold up to those court challenges. So recognizing that, I would just like then, I know you just spoke to it, but I would just want to get clear in terms of like, what is the shortest timeline you would anticipate, but would also afford us the strongest in terms of a legal challenge. Like, I know we're always so focused on quarters when we do our reports, but you would anticipate, I'm guessing from your previous comments, that we would need at least going into 2 quarters, really, from the sounds of it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll allow staff to reply, noting that we already heard it as a priority for them. It legally takes as long as they want if we want this to be solid, and it's always up to council direction as a whole versus committee. Mr. Mathers.
Through the chair, what I'm going to suggest is that we actually lay that out and provide that before council so you can see what the steps are moving forward. We of course want to ensure the due process, but also expedite it as quickly as we can. So it is that balance. We'll provide that to you before council.
Thank you, Councillor McAllister.
Thank you. And I'm not trying to belabor this point, but I just recognize in terms of the importance of this. And I appreciate that from a compliance perspective, this is top of your list. So thank you for that. I think it's just food for thought then for my colleagues. I know this will obviously go before council, but I think really it's keeping eyes on the timeline with this because, you know, the longer we wait, obviously, you know, more will happen in that interim period, right? I know we need to do this right. I know from what I saw with Hamilton, obviously, this was a, you know, contentious topic. As with anything, we need to do our due diligence. We need to have that public participation. But I think just to my colleagues, like, I would recommend we all just keep eyes on this and ensure that we really try to, you know, to move this forward as quickly as possible. And I thank staff for their hard work on this because I know the community is really asking for it. So thank you for all the work on this.
Thank you. I had Deputy Mayor Lewis next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So if I'm incorrect in this information, I'm sure that you'll correct me because you were with me through the last term of council. But to the best of my knowledge, I'm probably the only councillor who's brought forward a brand new bylaw from start to finish in the last term of council around tow truck licensing. And folks, I want you to know that took 3.25 years. So to have this is originating out of a motion that myself and Councillor Cuddy and the mayor brought forward in January. Here we are not quite through March and we've already got our first report back. So at the speed of government, we are moving at light speed on this one, in my opinion. And I do want to thank Mr. Lang and Mr. Katolik for the time that you took to speak with Councillor Cuddy and myself as well in consulting. And I know that Councillor Cuddy attended one of the meetings with another municipality. We appreciated that opportunity to provide some feedback too. Absolutely, we want to get this right. We don't want this to fail. So I think we do need to be cautious about pinning exact timelines on things. That said, I'm also mindful of the fact that when we have public participation meetings, then there are often desires to tinker with what's before us. And so when we talk about 2 public participation meetings potentially delaying things, I do wonder through you, Madam Chair, if a PPM for some preliminary feedback could not be aligned with the return of a draft bylaw at the end of Q2. And then from that, council could provide any preliminary direction that it wished staff to take before it brought back a final version. Then when that final version comes back, there could be one more public engagement. I'm just thinking about, rather than a separate meeting for a public participation meeting on its own, could we not have 2 public participation meetings that aligned with the draft bylaw and then a final bylaw direction? And perhaps if that condenses the time frame, even just by a committee cycle or 2 to align them, because what I would like to avoid is a draft bylaw and then some ideas by councillors to modify it a little bit, and then a PPM, and then some more ideas to modify it a little bit, because each time we send it back, we then have to allow one more public participation before we finalize things. So I'm just trying to avoid getting into 3 or 4 referrals back on this, because I would like to see this at least as a bylaw. Even if we need more runway to actually enact it, I'd like to see the bylaw in place in 2024. So if staff could provide a little bit of thought on the timeline there.
Certainly, and recognizing as well that staff said that when the draft bylaw come out with the CAPS agenda, people would only have a few days' notice anyways for the PPM. Staff?
Yes, through the chair, we'll take all of those comments under consideration, and we will report out to council on whenever the council meet, April 7th or 4th, and come up with a plan. But that's very possible. But that would be 2 public participation meetings, not the first time that that's happened.
I'll clarify, it's April 2nd is the council meeting. April 4th was the council meeting last year, and my calendar was wrong in my office. So it's now been changed, and it's April 2nd. Deputy Mayor Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I appreciate that staff will let us know by council and get some updates on that, because I think it would be helpful. Because I really do mean what I said. I want to avoid 2, 3, 4 referrals back to tweak things here and there. I would like to get this done this year in terms of a bylaw. I will say, I think that the Hamilton bylaw provides a great template, but there are some things in there that I think do need to be addressed from a London perspective. I do wonder, given the motion that's on the floor right now, if Q2, just because I'm cautious about muddying the waters too much, although I want this information, recognizing that the draft would be in Q2, and that licensing fees and staffing costs and those kind of things could fluctuate depending on any changes that are made to a draft bylaw. Is it within the realm of staff's ability to provide us at least some high-level estimates on staffing implications and licensing fees with that preliminary draft? Or is that something that's going to take more time?
Staff?
Through the chair, our preference for ultimate flexibility would be if the motion just stopped at the end of the word relocation. And that, we heard committee loud and clear today, and we would, between today and council, come up with a road plan of reporting back. Certainly, it's very possible that we hold more than one PPM. And if it stopped at that, it'd be less specific and allow for flexibility for staff to come up with a road plan for this.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'll have to leave that to members of the committee since I'm not a voting member of the committee, so I can't amend that. But I do think that we want to allow flexibility for you to get back to us in as timely manner as possible. I appreciate the commitment to give us a calendar or a timeline map to where this will land when this comes before us at council. Again, I'm going to echo the comments that we heard from Councillor Trussow. Very thorough report, lots of good information in here. Appreciate the work that went into it and how quickly you were able to turn this around. Again, I want to get this done, but I want to get it done right. You know, things like the $750 permit fee, I'm not sure if that's the right level for London, which would be a copy right out of the Hamilton bylaw. Although I do like where the financial penalties are, because I think that you've got to have the accountability on that for bad faith actors. I do appreciate also that you're moving this forward, recognizing that there's other pieces in the council resolution that are going to take a little more time around the existing residential rental unit licensing structure and how that looks. I'm okay waiting for that piece. I think we tackle this piece first on the rent evictions, then we can jump in and deal with some of the other pieces around the N12s. And things like that around our residential rental unit licensing, which I know continues to be a challenge for some folks. I know I sent a constituent the enforcement@london.ca email again this morning, so there's probably another file coming your way. But we'll leave that in your hands for now, and I'll just wrap up with that.
Thank you. Looking to see if there's any other speakers for a first turn before I start second round. Okay, Councillor Farrer, I know you're going to want second to speak again. So if you want to go ahead, I'm also looking for first turn. So, okay, so you can take the chair for I can do first, and please time me.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Pelosa, I have the chair, and you have 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Presiding Officer. Several concerns as we move through this. With the motion that's on the floor now, my concern would be if it's all-encompassing enough and sufficient to incorporate everything that staff wants to do, recognizing in the past, we've made changes at committee, and then when what we get back isn't quite all that staff would normally have done because we accidentally excluded something from the purview that would otherwise have been included. Also hearing from various residents and not questioning the importance of this and absolutely wanting to expedite it as much as possible. My concern is that if sufficient time isn't given to go through the process that needs to be laid out for this, for the PPM, hiring the staff complement, and looking at what needs to be done, that as we know, other municipalities are looking at pushing a bylaw similar, and no doubt there will be people out there looking for a legal challenge, that I wouldn't ever want it to be that London rushed things too much, didn't do our full due diligence, and we're the thread that starts unraveling the good work that advocacy groups are trying to do across the whole province, that we need to get our things right, and it might take an extra month or two, but staff needs, in my opinion, to feel that they have that time versus timelines that we've picked, realize we still want things as quickly as possible. So those are my concerns with it. I do have concerns with the wording as it is currently before us. As budget chair, I'm always going to have other concerns with sources of financing, cost recovery, and how that's going to look, and definitely not looking to make money off of this, but looking ideally that, is there a way that this model covers it? I would just hate to put in $800,000 or $1 million into this. Well, there's people desperate for that money also for housing, that we can balance those needs of what people need. So I will leave my comments there, and I will return the chair to the presiding officer.
Thank you, Councilor Pelosi. That was just over 2 minutes. I will yield the chair back to you.
Thank you, and Councilor Ferrer, you were at 3 minutes of your previous speaking time, but as committee, you could always have an extension, but just to let you know where you're at.
Thank you, Chair. So I do obviously want to provide sufficient time to staff and practice our due diligence. I hear the concerns of the committee, and I have the same concerns as well. I would also say, with respect to people who are losing their housing right now, if we were to give them that answer, they probably would be like, well, I'm out tomorrow, and it doesn't necessarily help. But at the same time, I understand kind of where we are, so I do want to give that sufficient time. So I don't know how that's going to look, but I can see that there's already some ideas with how the motion has been written. I want to go back to the possibility of 1 ppm or 2 ppms in just that discussion, because I do know that this report is just speaking to Part A of the original motion, the original council resolution from January 2024. So we are going to have some other sections of that I guess wouldn't necessarily be tied into this directly, but they are all related. How would the timing for this PPM with a motion like this or the possibility of several PPMs work with the other portions that we see from that council resolution?
Mr. Tolik.
Through the chair, the direction of council was to report back with options by the end of Q3 of this year, recognizing that there were, I think, 3 motions as a result of the discussion in January based on the original motion. So we recognize that the issue of rent evictions is top of mind. That's why we separated it out. So we're committed to reporting back on the rental licensing expansion by the end of Q3, but I would recommend a separate public participation meeting on that because the issue is separate. And no doubt, based on our past experience, expect landlords to come out to say that it's not required, expect tenants to come out to say that it absolutely is required. So my preference would be, from an efficiency perspective, to separate the 2 or 3 motions, focus on rent evictions, move that along, and we're committed to reporting back on the other motions at the end of Q3.
Councillor?
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you, Chair. Thank you for that. That was kind of my thoughts also. I just wanted to be sure that they should be separate. So looking to committee, I don't want to constrict ourselves with possible language that's not broad enough to capture what we're looking for to give staff, just the direction that you need. So I still see that I guess I don't have a seconder on this motion yet. Oh,
Sorry, Councillor Traustadt seconds you.
Okay. So with respect to, I guess, the timing, I would be amenable to change that. I do want to see it as soon as possible because I don't want to see people being rented or getting bad faith N13s and N12s served to them. So I guess I would look at committee, and I would be amenable to kind of change some language to make it work and give us the time that we need, but I also considering that.
Counselor Ferrer, if it helps, I believe Mr. Katolik's ease of direction was just that it would read that the civic administration be directed to report back regarding a renovation license and relocation. And I believe that's where he put the period for the stop in it.
Okay, I do want that renovation license and relocation language in there. So the fact that you have that in there, I'm good with that. So I will look to my seconder to see if there's any comments the seconder would like to put on this.
I feel as if we're going around in circles a little bit, and I think that's okay. I mean, I want staff to feel comfortable with what we're directing you to do, and I think you got a very clear message today that we are very serious about getting this in effect. So if it's okay with you, it's okay with me. I just want to say, if there are any owners out there who think that they're going to benefit by serving these notices before this bylaw comes into effect, they're making a big mistake. And I hope that this doesn't become a situation where people try to get in with their notices before the bylaw is passed, because I think we can have language in the bylaw saying that even if the notice was served, we can fix that. So please don't think that you'll be able to frustrate the purpose of this bylaw by sending out mass notices before it becomes effective. That is not going to work. With that, I think I'm amenable.
Okay, if you would just like to refresh, that's being uploaded into eScribe. I took that as I know it was on the floor, looking to see if anyone in committee wouldn't allow this, in which case we have to start voting down things and redoing things. Okay, I see that we're, Councilor Ferreira? Oh, Councilor Trousdale, your mic's on.
Thank you, Chair. Striking everything out after that, the way this looks good to me, as long as it works. And I just want to go back, if I can, Chair. Quick question to Mr. Katolik, from the, or Mr. Mathers, or whoever can answer this, from what Councilor Trousdale just pointed out. Would this bylaw be able to be applied retroactively, considering of the comments that the councilor just made, and knowing that there's a potential that we might get an influx of N13s being served because they know this bylaw is coming?
To staff and or to legal, or if you need a sidebar, we will wait a moment.
Through the chair, that's a bit of a hypothetical question which we don't have an answer for today.
Thank you. I'll ask it another day then. I'll get back to you on that. Thank you.
Okay, realizing that this would be the recommendation from committee and council still has time to get the timeline layout from staff and anything that arises between now and then. Currently, my speakers list is empty and I'd be looking to call the question unless there was something further of passing this or not passing this, voting on it, not tampering with what you should do. Okay, seeing none, I have the mover of Councilor Ferreira noted, seconder is Councilor Trousdale. Calling the question.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 5-0.
Okay, that would move us on to the business licensing bylaw and fireworks bylaw amendments. Looking to staff if you want to give a brief overview on this one, as it has encompassed some of the changes that you heard from council and committee prior.
Thank you. And through the chairs, on August 29th of last year, Municipal Council directed us to amend the fireworks bylaw, the business's licensing bylaw, to allow for consumer fireworks on 4 specific days of the year: Victoria Day, Canada Day, Diwali, and the Lunar New Year, as well as regulate the sale of consumer fireworks. So speaking on behalf of the fireworks bylaw amendment, PW 11, we've made the following amended changes to the fireworks bylaw. We've done some general housekeeping to strengthen the definitions so it's very clear to the public. We've added new definitions or understanding of the new words: Diwali, license manager, and Lunar New Year. So this means that the license manager will annually determine the dates for Diwali and the Lunar New Year, and we will publish these dates annually on the city's website. We've also made amendments with respect to the days and the times that residents may discharge consumer or backyard fireworks. So they can discharge these on those 4 days, Victoria Day, Canada Day, Diwali, and the Lunar New Year only, and they can discharge them only between dusk and 11 p.m. And then I'll turn it over to Mr. Katolik, who has made amendments with respect to the sale of consumer fireworks.
Okay, Mr. Katolik.
Thank you. We currently enforce the sale of consumer fireworks through our business licensing bylaw. However, we only enforce for pop-up sales. So those are the tents that you see up a couple times a year. This amendment focuses on all sales of consumer fireworks, so in all premises. It also introduces a fee, an annual fee for the sale of consumer fireworks at all premises. It also introduces administrative monetary penalties for noncompliance with this new category within the business licensing bylaw.
Thank you. Ms. Smith, I believe there's someone here from Fire as well, if you would like to introduce them. As I know, and if they would like to make an opening comment, as someone has already posed a question in advance of looking to see if Fire can, as we do with the outdoor fire ban, if the environment's correct, that environmentally that we just don't set them off.
Thank you. And through the chair, I have with me Deputy Chief Heptich. He is the Deputy Chief of Fire Prevention and Education, and this bylaw sits in his area, so he'd be happy to speak about the proposed additional amendment to the bylaw that was just circulated to talk to what would we do in times of drought or extreme heat.
Deputy Chief, welcome.
Thank you, and through the chair. In the scenario where we would receive a display fireworks permit, which means a large show, as the authority having jurisdiction, as per the National Resources Canada Display Fireworks Manual, we would have the ability to not approve the permit based on an unsafe site for the discharge. We would be able to, if, for example, if there is every fireworks permit or display permit that comes through has a rain date, we may be able to offer a drought date as well. However, under the display fireworks manual, and as the authority having jurisdiction, we would be able to simply not approve that permit for discharge of display fireworks.
Perfect. Thank you for that and welcome. So within staff's report, there's a section, a recommendation of A, B, and C, looking to committee to see if someone has a motion they would like to move, and then comments or questions if you need to ask them in advance, as this item has been pulled. I will also note that we have a delegation request, and they are with us via Zoom, and they are here if we'd like to hear it. Mr. Katolik, would anything in here normally trigger a PPM following these changes? No, okay. So it would be appropriate if you do want to hear from the delegation who is with us that you would do that today as well. So looking to committee to see, have verified with the clerk that the delegation is with us if we would like to hear them at this time before we start our Q&A. So I have a mover to accept that delegation and Councillor Trausow. I will second it. And it is just the one delegation with us today. So that's in eScribe if you want to refresh and then call in the question.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 5-0.
Okay. I will just let technology allow them. Okay, so perfect. Welcome. We can see you. You were just muted at the moment, and you have up to 5 minutes, and welcome back.
Hello. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I am admittedly struggling with my mental health today, so I'm going to try to be brief. I'm speaking on behalf of individuals with disabilities, individuals who are impoverished, and who I feel have been given little recognition when it comes to these changes in the fireworks bylaw. Specifically, there's still been no work done to recognize the issues in the complaint system. I would like to ask councilors to please review the letter that I submitted where I discuss that individuals who are too impoverished to afford phone plans simply cannot use the complaint system set up by City Hall right now. But there are many people in that position who have internet connections through their phones. And so if there was some form of button added to the Service London portal, specifically for noise complaints, this does relate to fireworks though, because fireworks are a type of noise complaint that always come after hours. And so even in other situations where people cannot access phone lines or cannot access the complaint line, a button will make it much more accessible for these individuals. I had a lot of other points, but my mind is not really working well with my mental health struggles. I want to ask that individuals please read the letters from D. Ronson and from B. Samuels. They made very strong points about how licensing is not being properly addressed. There's a lot of unanswered questions. This bylaw really needs to go back and have deeper consideration in terms of how they're regulating this licensing. And ensuring that sellers are following these bylaws and caring about what they're selling, that it falls within the bylaws and that people are not violating them. I also just want to note that it feels really controversial and hypocritical to hear so much talk about a PPM after just being at a PPM where councillors outright ignored what we said. The PPM for this particular matter, a lot of individuals with disabilities came out saying that they have serious problems with people violating this bylaw, and nothing was done to address the complaints. Nothing was done to address the complaint system. Staff have said they're concerned about triaging, but the fact of the matter is, even if people call during the day, you still have to triage then. So why shouldn't you also triage at night as well with a button on the service site? It's really frustrating to have councillors like Stevenson say that they think we should push this bylaw for fireworks forward because so many people came forward saying they wanted it at the PPM. But then to say that she doesn't think we should listen to a single word about sharing some of the funding for the police with other services because only
I'm on it. Yeah. So
no, that's an important
Ms.
point.
Amadela.
It's about the last PPM.
Yeah, and this is this
we're not
PPM.
being
You have
listened
granted
to.
delegate. I've paused your time.
I understand. And so I'm just saying, this is about people with disabilities not being listened to. This button will help address that. Councillors need to hear that people with disabilities are not being heard. I'm sorry that I could not articulate my entire letter. I please ask again that councillors take some time to read it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for being with us today, Ms. Amadelo. I will note that their correspondence is on the added agenda on page 88, and they also reference D. Ronson's and B. Samuels, which appear on page 90 and 92 of your agenda. That concludes the delegations that have requested to speak before us today. Staff have also been here to note their comments. I will return to my speakers list, and I have Councillor Trausow first, and then I will look for further speakers with Councillor Pribble and others.
I would like to make the observation through the chair with respect to public participation meetings that the addition of the fourth fireworks day was not the subject of a public participation meeting. The public participation meeting that we had was about option A or option B, and it was very clear that we were talking about adding Diwali. The motion to add Lunar New Year came up afterwards. There was no public participation meeting on that. Now, what I want to talk about is, first of all, I can't support this motion, and I'm going to continue to oppose this, and I will be voting against the motion that's on the floor, and I will urge other councilors to do so. However, should this come to council, I think what's particularly deficient in the staff report is the discussion of licensing. Because there was a lot of discussion about licensing at the last meeting, and I don't believe that this report addresses licensing questions. So I'm not sure procedurally whether it would be contrary to introduce a motion saying that the matter be referred to staff for further work on licensing issues. And I have a list of the licensing issues that I think need to be discussed, or whether procedurally it would be better to vote down the motion. And if the motion is voted down, then I could put another motion on the floor. I'm not sure what to do here, but the work on licensing issues really needs to be done. I don't think it's been done. And should I at this point say what I think those are, or should I hold that?
As this is, you don't know if it's going to pass or fail, and you don't know how that vote's going to go at council, I would recommend that if you have licensing questions and issues you'd like to raise, that this committee is the correct place to raise them, and we could ask staff to identify if they've actually been addressed in the report somehow, and why or why not.
Well, first of all, I don't think there was a discussion through the chair about it just assumed it would be 5 days. And I'd like to suggest that if we're going to allow 4 times a year, we might want to consider limiting that to 3. And I think some more analysis about that is needed. Second, I would like to have it clarified that the licensing fee is applied on a per day and a per vending site area. It's not clear to me in the report whether the licensing fee is one vendor across the city or per site. I think it should be per site.
Okay, so I've just asked you to hold there. Mr. Katolik is and team. A lot of these questions are coming your way. Would you like to hear the list of questions first and then a bulk answer, or would you prefer one question, one answer? Just one question, one answer? Okay, so Counselor has already mentioned some things there. As always, staff time doesn't count towards a counselor speaking time, so I will go to staff for those questions that you've heard. Okay, the counselor has a printed copy just for, as they read the questions, you have a chance to see them. So we'll just wait for a moment and then we'll resume.
Through the chair, would you like me to answer the 2 questions posed, or this list that I just received?
Your preference, just if you, just as we do have people watching and it's going to be recorded
Right, okay.
for people. So if you just say, I'm answering this question, or read the question, then answer it.
Okay.
Just to help with the ease of conversation of where we're at.
So the first question is limiting the allowable days of fireworks sales to 3. My answer to that is we were following up on the direction of council, and that's why the report is 5. The question on applying a licensing fee on per day and per vending site, my answer to that is the business licensing bylaw allows for a fee for recovery of costs. There is a nexus within the business licensing bylaw on the size of the fee. And as per all other premises that we license, I'll use food shops as an example, it is per location. So if a convenience store, corporate convenience store wants to sell fireworks, and they have 5 convenience stores in London, it'll be 5 licenses. The third question is requiring a pre-vending inspection of all vending sites. My answer to that is we currently do that together with fire prevention on pop-up sales, and we will continue to do that. The fourth question is specifying the content of the notice to be given to all purchasers. My answer to that is in the bylaw an administrative regulation, and the notice will be prepared. We currently have a notice. We'll have to amend it. It'll be prepared in conjunction with our partners at Fire Prevention. The next question is limiting the number of vending sites permitted in the city. My answer to that is, to the best of my knowledge, the only premises that we can limit the number of sites in accordance with the Municipal Act are adult entertainment. I'm not aware of limiting the number of sale sites for any other type of business premise. And the last question is reviewing the licensing fees and administrative penalties. We are open to council to do that review. However, it would be premature to do a review without having a complete season of the bylaw in force and effect.
Thank you. Councillor Trousseau, or would you like me to go to my next speaker? Okay, Councillor Ferrer, you're next on the list.
Thank you, Chair, through you. The question about the limiting of the number of sites to the city, would we be able to limit the amount of licenses issued?
To staff?
Through the chair, we would have to confirm that with our legal colleagues.
Councillor Ferrer?
Okay, thank you. And with going back to the discussion about the days of sale from 5 to 3, that, I just want to confirm, that was from a council direction. There is discretion on changing if council, or if committee and council agree, from the 5 days of sale to the 3 days of sale before the fireworks day?
To staff?
Through the chair, that's a direction of council, and I defer to the clerks if there was a change in those number of days, whether you need 2/3 vote.
The clerks don't have an answer at this moment. I think it's normally more the question of if it's been within that 1-year time frame since we made that discussion for it to come back to committee and through council. If I hear something contrary, or when I do hear from the clerks, I will let you know. Any other questions in the meantime?
No questions in the meantime. I'll wait for that one.
Okay, so we're going to wait on that one. The clerks are clerking. I will go back to my second speaker, who now inadvertently become my third speaker, Councillor Pribble, and then Councillor McAllister.
Thank you, through the chair, to the staff. I have 4 questions. The first one is, I know you're proposing with this report, but what specific improvements will be there from the business licensing, from the perspective of business licensing?
Staff?
Through the chair, the greatest improvement would be that we would be licensing all premises within London that sell fireworks. Currently, we only license pop-up sales, but I also need to advise committee that the reality of retail these days is that you can purchase fireworks over the internet 24/7.
Councillor Pribble?
Thank you. And the second question, in terms of the operation plans for enforcement of fireworks sales, will include additional initiatives, activities?
Staff?
Through the chair, we will follow current protocol that we currently do, which includes also plainclothes attempts of purchases.
Councillor Pribble?
Thank you. And we are proposing that each merchant will have to provide information to the customers. This information, are we as a city going to provide it to the merchants, to the businesses?
Mr. Katolik?
Yes, we currently do now for pop-up sales. The way we plan to do it is put the information online so that they can print it off themselves.
Councillor Pribble?
Thank you. And the last question, as the sales season is coming up very shortly, what will the procedure look like for this year in terms of the time-wise and in terms of application-wise?
To staff?
We will be ready for Victoria Day weekend. We anticipate the reality is there will be some vendors that may not be knowledgeable of this new amendment, but they will be very knowledgeable for Canada Day.
Counselor?
Thank you very much. No more questions. Thank you.
Counselor McAllister?
Thank you, through the chair. I was wondering to staff if I can follow up on the point that was made, and I've heard this from others in terms of the complaints and enforcement. Because I find this, it's a tough topic anyways, because really the public kind of feel a little bit defeated by it. It's just one of those things where if you report it, typically it's done by the time you guys get there, right? It's just the reality of fireworks, right? But I like the idea of having some kind of a reporting mechanism in terms of whether we do that through Service London, but I would just like to see maybe more data in terms of like when fireworks are being set off, right? Because it's kind of capturing that point in time, because we have time limits in terms of when you can set them off. But if I get a call or if I get an email of somebody complaining, it doesn't really have any sort of an impact, because I mean, by the time I get to you guys, it's pretty much done anyways. But if people can report this through the city, we might be able to get a better idea of like parts of the city and the times these are things are happening. Because right now, I just think we've got this missing gap in terms of the data to be able to enforce properly.
Staff?
Through the chair, an improvement that we're going to implement this year is to copy a best practice that we use for barking dogs, because this is very similar. You get a complaint about a barking dog, by the time you get there, the dog's in the house. You get a complaint about a firework, by the time you find it, it's over with. So we're gonna use the same protocol where residents will be able to fill out a log if their neighbors are setting off fireworks 3-4 days in a row. We will look at that evidence and lay amps as appropriate.
Counselor?
Thank you, through the chair. Yeah, because I'm just wondering, I feel like if we can get that point in time data, it'll give enforcement a better idea of, there's like the neighborhoods or like the worst offenders, right? Like you were saying with the dogs, right? It's the same kind of thing with fireworks. I typically always get it from the same areas, and I'm like, wow, like I know where my hot spots are. But I just think that would be valuable data for bylaw enforcement. Just in terms of, I just wanted to make some more general comments on this one. I mean, when this first came before us, I feel like we had a sufficient number of days. I understood the arguments that were being made in terms of, you know, the culture, but at the same time, I think festivities can evolve. I think there are other ways of having lights. I've seen in other countries, they have drones. Technology's moved forward. There are some countries that have outright banned fireworks. I know that wasn't something that my colleagues agreed to. I think the general consensus was if people want them, sure, have them. But I do think, to the point we heard earlier too, there are concerns in the community in terms of fireworks. And even to my comments on enforcement, it's one of those things where we can put whatever restrictions we want in place, but I mean, I think even if we outlawed them, people would still set them off, which is the unfortunate reality. So I'm kind of begrudgingly in favor of this. I appreciate the work the staff have done in terms of trying to reduce the days for sale, in terms of the licensing. I think that those are all beneficial. I would like to actually have these separated out because I'm still not in favor of increasing the days. So I would like to vote on each section separately, please.
Thank you. Counselor McAllister, are you willing to put staff recommendation on the floor, A through ABC? We will certainly call them separate. And then committee is welcome to vote them down. Like, I still need it though, for process-wise, when it gets to council, to be in a format that people can easily pull apart and vote on as they want. And Councillor Farrer, we do not have an answer from the clerks yet, but they are still looking back to see when that last meeting was that we did that change and what that effect would be.
I'll put the staff recommendation on the floor, but I'd like them separated.
Okay. I'll second it. So that's A, B, C. There's D. Sorry, there's also a D, as there was a revised. It's on your added on page 83.
sorry, 82.
82. I was wrong about April and what year we were in, but right against page 82. Okay, so that's moved and seconded. It will all be called separate when we're there. So Councillor Ferreira, your answer is that that 5-day was passed on August 29th, and a member who voted in the majority must make the motion. It needs to be approved by a majority of committee if we want to reduce it back down to the 3. I don't have the voting record, though, of who voted which way at this moment. And it could either be done here or at council if someone wants to dig into that.
Point of order.
Yep.
Yeah, I want to go back to the comment I made about the fact that at least for the 4th event, Lunar New Year, there was not a public participation meeting on this. And I'm wondering what the effect of that is. And further, as long as I have the floor,
Sorry, so just because you called a point of order and that's procedurally something different, and I don't have my procedural bylaw with me.
I'm done.
You could, yep. I will take that the chair didn't acknowledge your question to be answered by staff, and I will get back to that in one moment, as I still had Councillor Ferreira, and I believe Councillor McAllister had wrapped up. Councillor McAllister, you were good. You had concluded your questions.
Well, sorry, and through the chair, I just recognized that Councillor Ferrer was right. I had it backwards. I thought we actually had reduced it, but you're correct. We actually increased it. So, yeah, I'd like to see that too.
Okay, so I will get to Councillor Trousdow's question in a minute, as I just read out the clerk's answer to Councillor Ferrer's question from earlier in this item. Did you want to speak to that now?
Thanks, Chair. Sure. I believe that I would not be one of the members that would be able to bring that for reconsideration. But it's good that I have that information. I did have some other questions. I just wanted to wait for that one before I move on to the other ones. Just 2 more. For the annual fee of $800, is there, I guess it's kind of similar, is there discretion on that as well? Was that also a similar type of change, that it has to be annual and it can't be per allowable discharge day for fireworks?
To staff?
Through the chair, when we look at recommending to council fees for business licensing, there needs to be a nexus between the enforcement and administration and prosecution of the bylaw. We looked at our current fees for the pop-up sales, and we feel a fee of $800 is reasonable and defendable.
Councillor?
Thank you for that. So keeping the fee as it is for the year, is there a possibility to not charge it annually and charge it per allowable discharge day? So for instance, if a vendor were only going to be participating in selling fireworks, I don't know if this would actually happen, but if they only wanted to sell fireworks for 3 out of the days allowable, would they be able, are we able to just charge per those 3 days rather than the full year stretch?
To staff, also not sure how that affects what staff is trying to cover off to making up for revenue and staff time.
So through the chair, the fee is for the entire year. And from an efficiency perspective, then we would have to check whether they're actually selling fireworks for the 4th, the day that's permitted. So from a cost-effective position is to have it across the year. We will inspect together with fire prevention, and the fee is definitely defendable.
Councillor?
Okay, thank you. I get that. That's all the questions I have for now.
Thank you. I will go back to Councillor Trousdau for the question he stated, and I believe staff is ready with an answer.
Yeah, and also I'm still not clear whether or not the 800 is per vendor citywide or per stand, because I thought I heard you say before that it was per stand, and if that's the case, I'd like that clarified. I'm also not clear procedurally where we are. Would this be the time, since we're separating the motion, for me to add the referral back on these additional questions about licensing that have been raised? Or would that be contrary to voting on the recommendation to send to City Council the bylaw? Because if it's the latter, well, I would just suggest we vote down the bylaw, if that's the will of this committee, and then take up these separate licensing issues.
Okay. I'll do it the first question first. I believe staff said that the business licensing is per location. You get one per site, and if a vendor had 5 sites, they had to buy 5 licenses. But just making sure that we heard that right.
That's correct.
Okay. On your second part of the question, it would need to be in motion form, and a referral takes precedence over what's on the floor. I need your mic.
In that case, I would like to make a motion to defer this matter back to staff for further work on licensing issues, including A, B, C, D, E, and F, as I specified before, and I've given the chair that text. And I could provide that electronically.
Electronically would be beneficial because the clerk needs to drop that into eScribe. And I also gave my printed copy back to you at your spot. So that would be a referral. It would take priority over what's on the floor now. It would also require a seconder. Councilor Ferrer, you're willing to second the referral back to staff? Okay.
Who do I send this to? You see, we need to use our email at these meetings.
Okay, we're just loading that into eScribe before we proceed. Okay, if you would like to refresh eScribe, it's there and it's also up on the screens behind us. Okay, I'll be starting a speakers list at, I would like to be on it. Councilor Farah, could you chair for I could speak? And then time you as well.
Yes, I can, Chair. I have the chair and Councilor Pelosa's first on the speakers list.
Thank you. I appreciate that this is a divided discussion at council, at committee, and in our community. I believe staff have answered the question above. My concern is, well, I won't be voting for the referral back, but by the time this comes back, goes to staff, get some answers, come back, that it delays the implementation of the bylaw with Victoria Day coming up, and people would be scrambling then for Canada Day to understand the different processes and information going out to residents. And I know Canada Day is the main one in my ward, as we have some great parks. I don't want to name them, and people will be encouraged to go to use them for these purposes, but they are, and well, I will say the Southland Canada Day celebration does have White Oaks Park rented to do fireworks. So I would like to get the changes in place. I don't support the referral back. I would rather personally us deal with the changes before us, and then at council and at committee, people can vote it down if they want, but just if the bylaw does move forward, then that it is updated and in place should it pass at council, that we're in the best position possible should it pass. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Councillor. I can yield the chair back to you, and I have Councillor McAllister next on the list.
Perfect. I will
And
start.
You have 1 minute and 40 seconds that you spoke to on that.
Thank you. I will start with Councillor McAllister and then build my speakers list out from there. I will also note as chair that we still have several other items and confidential sessions. Committee does not have an end time, but at some point we will need a break. So Councillor McAllister.
Thank you, and through the chair. And while I do appreciate the sentiment of the referral, to me, it just feels like we're filibustering the fireworks. I don't, like as I said earlier, like I didn't want additional days. It's not perfect, but I mean, I wasn't on the winning side of this. So I think at a certain point we have to move on with this. And to Councillor Pelosi's point, we do need to also acknowledge that there are those days coming up. Regardless of what side of the debate you fall on this, I think we should just get on with it. So I won't be supporting the referral because at this point, I don't think that what staff will bring back to us will really add anything. The issues that we had disagreements on, you know, they didn't have any real, like they had some support, but not enough to carry. So I just think this is delaying an inevitable decision that we just need to get on with. So hopefully we can vote on this today. Thank you.
Thank you. Looking to see if there's further speakers. Okay, calling the question. Yeah, calling the question, the amendment that's before us for the referral back. That was moved by Councillor Trousseau and seconded by Councillor Ferreira, as just shown in the scribe.
Closing the vote, the motion fails 2-3.
Okay, that brings us back to the main motion that we were discussing prior. It's an A through D. I'm hoping that we had mostly discussed our concerns with it. It will be called separate. Councillor McAllister, just before we call them separate, did you want A through D each called individually, or was there one in particular that you wanted to, like, can I group any of them, or?
I believe it was a C, which speaks to the 4 days. That was the only one I wanted to vote on separate.
Okay. Currently, my speakers list on this is exhausted. Part C is going to appear first, and then we'll group A, B, and D.
Together or separate?
Together.
Yeah, I still think there are. I still think there are policy issues. I'd like to have them all called separate.
Okay.
'Cause I'd be not voting for any of them.
But then you would just vote no on C and no on A, B, and D when they're grouped.
Yeah, but the votes might be different. And in particular, I'm requesting.
Okay, we're
that they
calling
be
them
called
separate. Okay, so I'm about to open on A. Councillor McAllister, are you still fine being the same mover and seconder on all of them, regardless of how one votes? You're always welcome to vote separate, even if you moved or seconded something. Okay, Councillor McAllister. A is open.
Counselor Trossau? Closing the vote, the motion carries 3-2.
Calling B, Part B.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 3-2.
Calling Part C. Counselor McAllister, flagging this one for you.
Motion fails 2-3.
Okay, and just preparing to call Part D.
Just a point of order for a second.
Yep.
On my e-scribe, I have Part C as passing 3-2.
The clerk's screen is showing motion to approve Part C failed 2-3.
Do you mind checking this out? Because I do have it here on my screen, and I would hate to have it go away before.
Hit refresh, mine's showing correct.
Okay, I'm good, thank you.
Okay, calling Part D. And I always rather be called in the moment than have to reconsider and revisit something, so thank you.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 3-2.
Okay, that dispenses with item 2.6. That leaves us with, from consent, 2.7, which would be the Parks and Rec Master Annual Plan Report. I'm hoping the discussion on this one will be more brief. You have a motion? Okay, so I'm going to try and get through this one before we go on like just a 10-minute break. So Parks and Rec Master Annual Report, there's a brief overview from staff. So Ms. Smith for that, and then we will commence.
Thank you, and through the chair, we're pleased to present to you our third annual Parks and Recreation Master Plan Report. It highlights our COVID recovery data points to date, and it showcases some accomplishments in 2023, and then lays out our priorities for 2024. It's also an opportunity to serve as a great vehicle to send out our sincerest thanks and appreciation to thousands of staff who support the work every day, our community partners, and the participants themselves. So last year, we saw over 97,000 participants experience recreation programs, almost 200,000 swim and learn how to swim in our aquatic programs, 120,000 rounds of golf, and almost 40,000 hours allocated to our sports groups who access all of our city outdoor sports fields. So in total, we had over 3 million visits to all of our recreation and sport facilities. Staff also installed an urban park at the Thompson Ravine, built tennis courts at Roundtree, Glanworth, and Oak Ridge Optimist Park, and a garden of reflection at the Hyde Park Village Green. In addition, 2024 represents our 5th year, and as we noted in the report, we will be completing more formal updates every 5 years, where some recommendations may be revised due to changes in participation trends, demographics, growth patterns, and municipal best practices. So you will see this work commence in the coming months and report back to you. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll note that the current staff recommendation is just that this information be received. So I know Councilor Trosa had some questions, but at some point I will, are you moving receipt of it, or are you going on the speaker's list, Jerry? Okay. So you know I normally like to keep things tight, so I'll go to Councilor Trosa. I'll recognize you always receive the report and then add other things into it.
Yes, I'm happy to receive the report. The report is the report, and I'm not going to purport to change it here. What I would like to do, though, is ask about additional items that can be included in future reports. And if appropriate, I will make a motion to include those. The first is whether it would be useful to include a review of the security deposits that are being charged to private groups. And I'm not talking about somebody who wants to have a picnic at one of the tables. I'm talking about taking over the entire park for a commercial operation. The example of that would be Rock the Park. My view is that the security deposit should be reviewed, and it should be increased, because there are just too many complaints about the condition that the park is left after something like Rock the Park. My second, or should we just do one at a time? Yeah.
Ms. Smith? Sorry, that was me not sharing. Well, maybe it was both of us not sharing our mic.
Thank you, and through the chair, I appreciate the question. And you're going to see this year a review of our special events policy. So we will be bringing back our revised and proposed new special events policy to City Council for a review. And additionally, this year, we're also reviewing all our user fees. And so that would be included under that. And at that time, we're reviewing our fees this year in hopes of maybe making some changes to user fees in 2025.
And that report
Sorry.
would come.
Yeah, just, was that report coming later in 2024?
Sorry, thank you, and through the chair, good question. That special events policy, our proposed update to the special events policy will probably be coming in the fall of this year.
Councilor Trosa.
Thank you, that answers that question. My next question is having something in the master plan that mandates without exception the provision of water where there is a public event, particularly one that is otherwise close to the public. This is an issue that has come up quite a bit, and it's something I've expressed concern about.
Ms. Smith, I believe that would be the thirst stations, and that is contained in your report for the special events coming up.
Yes, thank you, through the chair. You will see that revised policy in our special events policy coming this year.
Councilor?
So far, it's not necessary for me to make an amendment because we'll be seeing the report before that. My final question is more general, and that is, has thought been given to the nature of the uses that happen in the parks? We tend to use Harris Park for the large public events, and I'm wondering, are there other parks in the city that could be just as appropriate, if not more appropriate, in terms of the location, the accessibility, the parking for these large scale events, which is not just Rock the Park, but also, hate to say it after the last point, but fireworks displays.
Thank you, and through the chair, I'll respond briefly and then maybe turn it over to Mr. Yeoman if you want to speak to it too. But that again is very good question, and as part of our special events policy, we are looking at different opportunities in parks, is correct to share what, depending on the size of event, what parks have the amenities to support that beyond the current parks that we use, which is in particular Victoria Park and Harris Park.
Councilor?
Has a traffic study been done talking about the implications of having such a large event in a park that has very limited vehicular access compared to other parks?
Ms. Smith?
Through the chair, I'm not aware of it. I'm not sure if Mr. Yeoman or Ms. Scher is.
Mr. Yeoman?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. So I'm not aware of a study that's recent. There probably was one at one time. In relation to your previous question, Councillor, we will be looking at our park typologies and the nature and character of our parks with the upcoming update to the master plan. Something we're looking forward to, and I'm sure this is something that we'll be discussing as part of the community consultations as well.
Councillor?
And finally, my last question goes to public accessibility of documents pertaining to park use. I would like to see a copy of, and again, I'm not talking about a family having an anniversary thing in a park renting a table. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in the larger commercial operations, and I do think there should be public access to the contracts between, for example, the City of London and the Rock the Park promoters. And in the past, it's been suggested to me that that would be privileged, and I could not get them. Could you help me with that?
Yeah, to staff or to legal of contracts and privilege or public information once it comes into our realm in FIPA.
Thank you.
Ms. Smith?
Sorry, thank you. And through the chair, that's something I'd have to talk to legal about, and I'd be happy to respond via email to the councillor and have something in time for our city council meeting.
Councillor?
That's a very reasonable response for the council meeting. I think the question of public accessibility to these should be judged by the criteria of what's in MFIPA. And if a document would be producible under MFIPA, there's no reason why it shouldn't be given to a councillor, presumably in open session. So thank you. I'll wait for that. I think the only thing that I might want to make a motion about, and if this is not feasible, just tell me, is a traffic study. Because I am very concerned about the traffic that happens in and around Harris Park when there's a large event there. Is this something that the traffic department could reasonably look at as a study?
Through you, Madam Chair, the catchment area for a traffic study of that nature would exceed our own in-house resources to deliver. We would have to hire a consultant to take basically a cordon count around all of the bus routes, walking, transit, and driving routes for major events. So within current budgets and current resources, we would be unable to do that right now.
Councillor?
Would it be putting costs aside, would it be in keeping with public safety considerations to have that type of study before we engage any further large events in some of these parks?
Madam Chair, we are not aware of any particular traffic safety concerns associated with these large events because of the number of access points by various modes to centralized events held largely in downtown London. So it's a grid pattern. There's many roads that can provide access. If the councillor is talking more about emergency response within the context of an event itself, there are plans that are developed in combination with the event holders, emergency service providers, and the Emergency Operations Center for those events.
Would an indication of those arrangements be included in the contract between a promoter and the city?
Yeah, not sure you can get that now or it comes back later.
So thank you. And through the chair, we currently require an emergency plan for all of our event holders. It's part of when they sign the contract with the City of London, it's part of the requirements. And as part of our review of the special events policy, we're working with our emergency management and corporate security division and looking at what are those current templates, how can we enhance and build on them, and what are promising practices in other municipalities when it comes to emergency management around large special events.
Thank you. In light of the representation that there'll be additional information given at council, and also there will be a report in 2024, I do not intend to make a motion amending this at this point. And thank you very much for your responses.
Okay, thank you. So right now I have on the floor a receipt of the staff report moved by Councillor Trousseau. I would need a seconder. Seconded by Councillor McAllister, and that gives you the right to the next speaker on the list, which you actually were anyways, but go ahead.
Thank you to the chair. I just want to highlight the great work I've seen in terms of our Rec and Parks Department. I think in 2023, I had a number of good news stories that I just wanted to highlight. The tennis courts with Rowan Tree, the reopening of the Glencairn pool, very impactful things that we're able to get accomplished last year. Very much looking forward to the work starting on Silverwoods 2024 moving forward. I think it's really great in this master plan that we acknowledge in terms of just the cycle renewal and reinvesting in the current facilities we have, because they really do mean a lot to our older established neighborhoods. Speaking on behalf of my residents, they really do appreciate it. I also want to acknowledge that I appreciate in terms of our 2024 priorities, with the cost of living, that we acknowledge that the waiving or reducing of fees where possible. I don't want there to be barriers to Londoners accessing parks and recs. I think it's an important point that every opportunity do we try to make things affordable and accessible to Londoners. So I just wanted to end by saying thank you for all the hard work for the Parks and Rec Department. It really does mean a lot. So from my ward to staff, thank you very much.
Thank you, and that was currently my last speaker on that item. Councillor Pribble.
Thank you, and through the chair to the staff. I was so extremely happy to see this report. Those are some really great numbers, especially when we look after pandemic. And I think that there's a great value and service that we have provided to Londoners. And I was really very pleased, and thank you and to all your teams, because there is a lot of work and to every single person. And I had the opportunity to visit quite a few sites during last year. And I really am very grateful and thankful, because there's a lot of value for 500,000 of Londoners. So thank you for that. I was really glad to hear that we are going to go back to KPIs after the pandemic. I do have a question regarding the 2024 plan and the initiatives and actions. We have implemented a new strategic model that includes the bottom step, which we ended up calling implementation plan, which will have the actions, responsibilities, deadlines. And I just want to make sure that these initiatives, actions that you are proposing for this year, they will be developed into the strategic model that we have proposed. Thank you.
Ms. Smith?
Thank you, and through the chair, very good question and good timing, because my team is working on it right now. So you will see all of these align very nicely with the City of London strategic plan and the implementation plan. So we will be laying those out when we lay out the implementation plan over the next 4 years.
Councillor?
So thank you for that, and please keep working harder at these initiatives, because I'm a really true believer that these initiatives that your two departments are proposing are bringing us more and more together, all Londoners, wherever we come from, whatever our backgrounds are. And I really think it's a tremendously value, and it's untapped, and a lot of people overlook it, but it's really tremendously important and great value. Thank you.
Thank you. Looking for other speakers? Seeing none, calling the question.
Councillor McAllister? Closing the vote, the motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. That concludes our consent items. We have no scheduled items. We do have an item under items for direction. We've been at this 2 hours and 15 minutes. Looking to see if everyone needs a break or just me, because if it's just me, someone else can chair while I'm gone. Okay, nice, I tried. So looking 10, 15 minutes. Okay, and I do recognize that we do have a delegation request for item 4.1, who has been with us, and I do see you, and we will get to this after 10 minutes. So I need, Councilor, you can't, if I lose quorum, then we just accidentally end the meeting. So a mover for 10 minutes from Councilor McAllister, seconded by Councilor Ferrer, just a high hand vote. Okay, it passes 325. See you back. a delegation status for a member who's been in the audience, and then we'll go into Q&A. So to staff.
Thank you. And through the chair, as you will see on the committee agenda, Jones Entertainment Group has requested a policy exemption to hold Rock the Park for 5 consecutive days in Harris Park from July 9th to July 13th. So as per our current special events policy, this requires council approval. I believe it has been done, it was exempted in 2020 and again in 2022. So we are allowed to only hold special events in so many days in Harris Park. So in order to do that, we have to manage the number of large events that are allowed. So to this date, we have capacity, as we only have 9 current days of amplified concert in Harris Park. So should you approve this exception, we've attached a draft bylaw to the report to go to council.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Looking to committee to allow for the delegation request that was submitted advanced in writing from Ms. Velastro, who is in the audience with us today, moved by Councillor Trousseau, seconded by Councillor Pribble. So that would give the normal 5 minutes to a delegation. That vote will become available in eScribe. Okay, that vote is open.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 5-0.
Okay, thank you. To technology, our speaker is on the gallery on this side. Ms. Velastro, welcome, and you have up to 5 minutes. And thank you for your patience in waiting for us to get to this item today.
I'm getting used to it now.
Okay, perfect. We can hear you.
Okay, so this comes up every time they ask for an extension. And the response we get is that filling up hotel rooms is more important than the well-being of residents. So if you don't experience this, it might be hard for you to understand. But what we hear is not music from Rock the Park. What we hear is very loud bass that ricochets off our windows and off the tall buildings. And for people who live on the west side, the sound becomes amplified as it goes down the river. And there's been complaints as far away as Springbank, Old South. And that's very hard to endure, that pounding and that bass that goes on for hours in a day and into the evening. And it doesn't feel good. It feels very uncomfortable. We can't sit in our yards. And as we learn more about the negative impacts of noise, I would really appreciate it if you would consider people over just filling up hotel rooms. I don't understand why you can't find the balance in something like that. This Rock the Park already has 4 days, and it makes a big difference for residents to have to endure yet another day of just having this vibration all the time inside their house and outside their house. And I want to challenge the staff person who said there's a lot of access points to Rock the Park. That's not true. The access points are through our neighborhoods, and you can see this when you go to Rock the Park. Our streets are filled with traffic, filled with parking spots, often illegal. At the end of the night, late into the night, we hear doors slamming, people loud and drunk. We hear a lot of revved up vehicles, all associated with that exodus of people on foot and cars leaving after Rock the Park. So it's incredibly intrusive. We are putting up with it now. I'm hoping that the master plan will look at whether these events are appropriate in our parks. Harris Park is eroded. Sections of it are bald. It's muddy. It's hard to sit on the grass. And now, and just to say that a lot of the trees at Harris Park are being removed now because they're going to put a road in so that the trucks for these events there's literally going to be a road for these trucks to move into the park. And that's why a lot of these trees at Harris Park are being removed, and that's why people are upset, and that's why there's a protest planned for March 24th. So I'm asking you to please think about residents. It's one day for Rock the Park, but it's 5 days of complete chaos in the neighborhoods that surround the park. And for the ones that are farther away, their sound is even more distorted. So we don't hear a Neil Young, we just hear bass. And I would appreciate if you would respect us and not just push us aside just because you think it might fill out a hotel room for one more day. So I'm asking you to vote no on this extension. And then we need to seriously consider whether these events are even appropriate. Like if, 15,000 people are appropriate in a park. And the last thing I'm going to say, which is important to me, but again, this gets fluffed off, is there are wildlife fledglings at that time in the park. It has a long history of wildlife nesting of migratory birds. And that kind of event, you don't know, no study's ever been done to see how many kills of young birds are happening because of those events. And that goes to fireworks as well. And for people that live there, wildlife viewing is a very important pastime and one of the best things about living along the river. And I would appreciate it if you looked at this in a more holistic way and not just dismiss our voices because you think someone is going to make an extra money for one night in a hotel room. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that was the staff report and the one delegation that we had today. The staff report does have a section A and B. That is on page 126 of your committee report. I'll also note that there was another added communication as well that was sent in. That's on your added agenda. Looking to committee members, as I would need a mover and a seconder of something to advance the conversation. Or to receive the staff report, that one I could always split A and B. So I need something on the floor to have us a discussion. So Councillor Pribble on page 126 is the staff's recommendation. Part A is that the request be received, and then part B is directing staff to do something. So looking to see if someone would put A and B on the floor, and we could separate it. You could vote down or up what you like. Just we need something on the floor to have a discussion. Councillor Pribble.
I would like to move the staff recommendation. Yes.
Okay, so Councillor Pribble is moving section A and B. Councillor McAllister is seconding A and B. So that puts the report and the direction on the floor. We will call those separate when it comes time to vote, absolutely. Looking to see a speakers list on this item. Councillor Ferreira.
Thank you, through you. So I, as the councillor who sees this area and has residents around, I do get a fair amount of feedback when Rock the Park is taking place. And I would also add that I live about 937 meters away, direct line of sight. So I can hear what's going on pretty clearly, and I can't hear very well. And so I do understand what we're hearing from residents. I would want to say that, I do want to see like an economic impact for the downtown core, but I also would like to know who do the operators have in mind for that Tuesday. That's really kind of where my vote will land. I'd like to know who it is. If it's someone like Taylor Swift, I will be voting for that. But if it's someone that we don't know of, I'm not really willing to kind of write a blank check. So that's kind of the question I have. I would love to hear if we can get some information on who they would have for that Tuesday. But at this point, I don't have that information, so I would probably not be supporting that extra day at this moment.
I'm not aware of who it would be. Usually they expand and it's a good lineup as they are looking for ticket sales. Staff, do you have an inside scoop on who the performers might be?
Thank you. Through the chair, I'm just looking at the note they attached, and it states, "We have an opportunity to present some country artists on Tuesday, July 9th for 10,000 fans coming into downtown London." So that's all the information. I would assume when they reached out to my special events team with the letter and then the recommendation, we said it's dependent upon council's decision-making. So I assume they're waiting for a decision to be made at the council meeting before they confirm anything.
Counselor?
Thank you. So that is what I'm looking for, who it is. I did check Taylor Swift's schedule, and she's in Germany, so I would assume that she's not coming to this one. But I'm interested on who that would be. That would be what would carry my vote to know who it is at this time.
Okay, and perhaps at a future meeting, you can ask the mayor to write a letter directing Taylor Swift to appear before London City Council and some fans in London, looking to see for their speakers on this item. Councillor Trousseau.
In all due respect, I think it's a little disingenuous to call this a one-time exemption, because it just happens. It just happens. This is not a one-time exemption. This is becoming the rule. And I think the speaker outlined some of the legitimate concerns that people in the neighborhood have. Now, I am not trying to cut back the days. I'm not trying to do anything like that. But I am absolutely not willing, without more information, as the councilor has requested, I'm not going to approve this just based on we'd like to book some other acts. Why do we have limits in the first place? Why do we have these limits? And I guess my question to staff historically is, what is the rationale for even having limits on the number of days that we can have these concerts in the first place?
Thank you. To staff.
Thank you, and through the chair, the current special events policy allows for 12 days of combined amplified concerts per year in Harris Park. So in the current special events policy bylaw, there was a limit on the number of days per event to allow for a number of events to total 12 amplified concert days per year. Typically, our special events book the year before. So currently, right now, we have 3 requests for major events, totaling 9 amplified concerts. Therefore, there's 3 days, according to the current special events policy, that amplified concerts are allowed in Harris Park. Hence, the request coming from the special events holder to add an additional day.
Councillor?
There's no mandate that 12 days be used. That's just the maximum, correct?
Staff?
Through the chair, that is set out in the policy. In Harris Park, it outlines the number of days allowed right now to have amplified concerts in Harris Park.
Councillor?
Is there an issue with stress on the land if it's being overused, including trees and the entire environment?
Staff?
Through you, Madam Chair, that is one of the reasons behind limiting the number of event days that occur in both Harris and Victoria Park, is to ensure there's adequate time to have those ecosystems recover in between and to make sure that we have the time to clean up and deal with that space well.
Councillor Trousseau?
Regarding last year's Rock the Park event, were there complaints regarding vehicles, including large trucks, coming in proximity to the event?
Thank you, and through the chair, yes, we had one complaint that I'm aware of, at least one day, maybe a couple complaints on that day. We had extreme flood warnings in Harris Park last year, so I think it was one of the exception years, and because of that, vehicles had very limited space of where they could park to offload, and appreciative of the complaints from the community that we activated those right away, contacted the special events holder to move the vehicle. But we're aware of that, and my team is down there during the event trying to manage and ensure that all the policies and rules are followed as best they can.
Okay, well, I don't have any further questions. I've heard nothing on the floor that would change my vote, and I'm going to be voting no on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Further speakers? Counselor Pribble? Sorry, Counselor Pribble's next, and then Counselor Lehman.
Thank you. So I live very close to it as well, and actually my business is close to it as well. And I want to start by saying that actually going back of the 23 years of the ownership of the business, the Rock the Park is not really a gain for me. It's actually, if anything, I would say it works against me because I don't get a lot of clientele from there to come to the restaurant, but the parking lots are full and my regular customers, they have to park further. Having said that, when I see all those people walking down and the joy, the fun, the excitement, and us bringing, and this private organization bringing people together, I love to see that. I really love to see that. I see that, yes, it is one additional day, but if I look at, if we talk about trees, grass, the one additional day is, in my perspective, is not going to be a game changer. I would like if there's, and I just heard that there's going to be a country music, so yes, it's not going to be, not Shania Twain, but whoever, but anyways, bottom line is it's going to be country music. I'm very much in support of it, and I want people to come. And again, if we go back what we went through the pandemic a few years ago, these events and what I was saying 10, 15, 20 minutes ago, we need to bring Londoners together, spend as much time together, and have a great time. And I think Rock the Park delivers that for Londoners, and I hope that it will be passed, and we are going to have another great year of Rock the Park. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Lehman.
Thank you. Yesterday, I was at the Richmond Tavern in the afternoon, listening to a fantastic local London band, Newport Electric, who just dropped their latest album on Spotify, for a little plug there. And everyone was there. It was a packed house, and it was creating a lot of energy. A lot of discussion about us being the UNESCO City of Music. What makes a downtown vibrant? What makes a city a cool place to visit and to live? Well, I can't think of anything more than live music. I wish we had more live music, and as we see more people move downtown and Dundas come back to life, I hope we see increased opportunities to see live music, local bands coming in from out of town. This particular event has gained a wide following. Cities are known for certain events, and I would argue that this city is known for Rock the Park. It's an annual event. It's professionally run. When I heard of questions about complaints, I'm surprised with the thousands of people that come down. The complaints are small, and I think it speaks well to our city staff and the operators of this event. They know what they're doing. Every now and then, yeah, they ask for an extension, and I think the reason for restraints or for constraints there is to allow, if others want to produce activities down the park, they would get their share of it. This particular year, there's capacity in our booking to have an extra day here. There's no question of the popularity by those that live in London and outside of London. The economic spin-offs are huge. And boy, what a fun time in the middle of summer for us to celebrate in a terrific, responsible way. So I encourage the committee to allow this extra day, and I look forward to seeing more of these types of events in London.
Thank you. Further questions or comments before calling the question? Seeing none, calling the vote. And yes, we are separating them out. So A is coming first, which is the report be received, and then we will deal with B.
Counselor Pribble? Closing the vote, the motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. This is now Part B, the one directing civic administration.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 3-2.
Thank you. That concludes items for direction and deferred matters, additional business. I am aware of one. It is an emergent motion. It will need to be presented by Councillor Pribble as he's a member of committee, though it has to deal with Councillor Stevenson's ward. Okay, Councillor Pribble, if you want to read it out, you'd also refresh your screen. It is now loaded in eScribe.
So this is the motion being brought forward, that civic administration be directed to implement a reduced parking incentive as a pilot project until the end of Q3 2024 municipal lots 1 and 2, utilizing the existing Hong mobile application, recognizing the municipal lots 1 and 2 have a lower hourly and daily revenue intake in relation to other parking lots managed by the city. And the reason why this was brought forward because the current agreement ends on March 31st, and this is the motion I'm bringing forward.
Okay, I did deem it as emergent, as this is either the work would be done here at committee and it goes to the April 2nd council, or council is, I don't want to say blindsided, but given really short notice to deal with on the 2nd. So that's why this is the committee it comes through. So I said, yes, I will yes to hearing it. Councillor Pribble, I'm not sure if you want to speak to it first. I am on the speakers list, but.
Thank you, Chair. I have the chair recognizing Councillor Pelosi.
Thank you. As I said, I like to do committee work at committee and to make sure that councillors have information that they can be prepared with. I will not be supporting this myself, but want the discussion to happen here and at council so we have a base of a premise, realizing council will probably be a long night on the 2nd as well. And happy that the councillor is here to speak to it, and then they can certainly make their full case at council, realizing some other councillors might have similar concerns. It allows for that platform, realizing, as stated, things expire on the 31st.
Thank you, Councillor. I will yield the chair back to you.
Okay. Looking to see if there's any immediate speakers of council. If not, I will go to the visiting councillor since they're not a member of council, they couldn't second or move their own motion. Councillor McAllister.
Thank you, through the chair. I was just wondering if staff could comment in terms of the financial impact that this would have in terms of the reduction of fees.
Mr. Mathers.
Through the chair, so just to give a little bit of background, there was temporary free parking in these lots that was provided through the Quarry Action Plan. That funding is no longer available, and it ends at Q1 of this year, so that just at the end of the month. So this is to replace that. We have a very high level estimate of about $80,000 to $100,000 for these lots, and we don't currently have a source of funding to be able to subsidize that from, but that would be something that would be a logical progression out of the work that's being suggested here.
Counselor McAllister? Sorry, I thought you were hand talking versus telling me that you were, you were good. Counselor Stevenson?
Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you to committee for letting me get this on here today. I do have some work to do prior to council on April 2nd, but I've had several people reach out to me concerned about the parking in municipal lots 1 and 2. So if anybody has been there recently, I parked there last Saturday night to go to the play at the Palace. It's a concerning situation. It's not a place that feels very safe to leave your car or to even walk through. And so to be asking people to pay full price for the parking, I think is really unfair. So the businesses there are struggling for many reasons that I know we have many programs in place to try to assist that. I'm hoping, in speaking to staff, the recommendation was that this would go to Q3 2024 in the hopes that we will have done the things that are needed to make this just a temporary measure. The other really pressing concern is we have 95 beds in the cold weather response right there, and staff and volunteers have reached out saying that the additional cost for parking is an issue. So hence the emergent nature of this as well. So it is a request that given the what I hope to be extenuating and temporary circumstances that we're facing there, and I appreciate staff working with me this morning to come up with something that won't be too costly, and that will support all of the endeavors that we're trying to do in that area. So I do appreciate it. I understand the vote may not go the way I want it to at committee, and that's okay. I appreciate it being here so that I can address it at council. Thank you.
Counselor Purple?
Thank you, Through the chair to the staff. I heard $80,000 to $100,000. Is that for the 6-month extension, or is that the annual?
Through the chair, so that's an estimate for the 6-month period.
Okay, thank you for that answer. I will certainly, as I put out the motion, I will certainly support it, and based on what my fellow councilors stated in terms of the social agencies, community organizations we have there, and for the businesses, and I really think that this would be a benefit, that it's not at such a high cost, but I really think it would make a difference for this part of London. Thank you.
Thank you. Further speakers? Counselor Ferreira?
Thank you, through you. So I can see we have, I think, over 20 municipal parking lots currently. That's correct? 22? Okay. And I see that this is having it has a lower hourly and daily revenue intake because I'm assuming it's not used as much. I'm just worried about, I get feedback as well about, us closing the core code and not giving the free parking as it is now. And we have extended this several times already. I'm just very concerned on the slippery slope that this might add up if we were to approve those 2 municipal parking lots for free parking, and we have all these other ones, especially when we're trying to have a direction, with just the direction that we're trying to take right now. So we've extended it a couple times. So I guess my first question would be, are there any other lots that have a low daily revenue intake that would be similar to municipal lots 1 and 2 that you know of?
Through the chair, we haven't done that analysis at this point, no.
That's okay. I know I didn't ask this question earlier. My next question would be, how much revenue did we forego with the free core code on the Honk app, municipal, with all the lots considered?
All the lots since it was implemented?
Yes, I did. I remember we saw that on a report, but I just can't remember the number.
Through the chair, so that report was in June of 2023. The annual overall budget deficit was approximately $3 million per year over the period of the program.
Counselor?
Thank you for that. So I'm just concerned about like what precedent this would set if we were to open it up like that. And that's why I wouldn't be supporting it. I understand what the council is trying to do. I did have this similar thoughts with some of my municipal parking lots as well, or the ones that are within Ward 13. But I figured that considering with budget constraints, especially what we just went through with the multi-year budget, we do need to make sure that we have all sources of revenue coming in. So I wouldn't be supporting that as it is right now for those two reasons, for the precedent that it may set with other municipal parking lots and with the revenue piece as well. And I should add a third portion to that. With our direction, with what we're trying to take with the city, with downtown, with parking in general. So that's why I wouldn't be supporting this motion as it is.
Thank you. Further speakers? Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you. Just a quick comment to that and maybe a question to staff as to whether it is precedent setting, but the motion says that it's a pilot project. It's just for those two municipal lots, so that wouldn't be the street parking and, you know, the extensive core area, which of course I would love, and we know that it's quite costly, and so I would love to ask for more, and I'd love to ask for the whole downtown, and there's a specific and unique situation in those two lots that isn't anywhere else. It isn't even on the street. It's just in those lots. And we do have the issue of number 69 in the core area action plan that was never addressed. We have the extra social service agencies funded in that area for now, knowing it's a temporary extenuating circumstance. And so again, that's just why I'm asking for this to be a unique situation with a unique solution.
Councillor Trousseau.
So it's a one-time request?
I sure hope so. There's lots of plans in place to address these issues this year, and I do hope so.
Well, I don't hear any reason why I would be inclined to support this $80,000 extension. I'm wondering why this didn't come through the budget process.
Things that come through the budget process are directed by council, and we already gave staff a direction to stop.
Through the chair, we were given direction to not extend the program beyond Q1 2023. So that's what we included in the budget process.
You were given direction by council? In which case, is this a decided matter of council?
I would say I deemed it to be different enough that it was looking for a short exemption for a pilot project while other things came in place, like a stopgap measure.
Through the chair, we did speak to the clerk about that, and it was not deemed to be, it was significantly different.
Okay, well, let me deal with this one, the merits then. I could think of a lot of things that I'd like to do with that $80,000. That we just went through a process where people were like, oh no, we can't spend another $80,000 on this or that. I'll use the Arts Council as an example. Didn't even get to the floor. I just really have a hard time with doing this as a last minute add-on outside of the normal process because people would like to have subsidized parking. And I know the question of subsidized parking is a contentious issue in this town, and I'm not sitting here saying, you know, get rid of all of it, but I just think to extend it at the cost of $80,000 at the last minute, just under the guise of it being a one-time thing, I just don't see the justification. So I'll be voting no on this, and I'll be encouraging other councilors to vote no on this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I have no one else on the speakers list. Calling the question.
Closing the vote, the motion fails 1-4.
Okay, that's all I'm aware of for the deferred matters, additional business, or emergent motions. We do have an item for confidential session, so we're going to stay put in chambers for that. So everyone else who's not privy to that can take their leave and give me a moment while we secure chambers. Thank you. Oh, sorry, and I need that motion to go into closed session. Moved by Councillor McAllister, seconded by Councillor Trousseau. That vote's opening in eScribe. Councillor Ferrer, if you report out.
Thank you, Chair, and I can report out that progress was made during our closed session.
Thank you. That concludes all business that we had on the agenda to deal with. It would be now a motion for adjournment, moved by Councillor Trousseau, seconded by Councillor McAllister. All in favor of adjournment by a show of hands? That motion is carried. We are adjourned. Thank you.